현재 전보 조던 힘이장 보는 보는 전보 감기하다 바크라다 감산도 셔만 돈바 특제 잔라기 점사라는 전로워 증이 정금서 자고 특집션로 일라만 지면 번조자라 소란
The supreme, profound, and sublime Dharma is difficult to encounter in a being. Yans now see it, hear it, receive it, and kept it, and vow to attain the true meaning of the Tathagata. In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us generate supreme bodhicitta. Now we will continue the class with the three supremes as composed by the great Terton Lerab Lingpa. We have already covered the preliminary, which is the supreme of aspiration, and then currently we're talking about the supreme of the practice, the actual practice, that is without an object. This is the second supreme. And then within this part, it talks about the actual practice, the virtuous roots of the actual practice, and then the common actual practice without an object, and the uncommon actual practice without an object. These are the three aspects. We have already finished the first part, and yesterday we had already talked about how to come to the understanding of selflessness of self and selflessness of phenomena. I think many of you, after studying for a period of time in Larangar, you should at least generate some theoretical understanding of selflessness of self and selflessness of phenomena. This is really crucial. Now let's continue. Yesterday we had already talked about the appearance and emptiness within these two truths are of one essence. However, it has two different aspects, because in front of the mundane beings, when the mundane beings face the true truth, they feel that within the ultimate truth it is existent, but within the conventional truth it is existent, but within the ultimate truth it doesn't exist. But for the noble ones, they would be able to see through that and just see the essence of it. That is, emptiness is form and form is emptiness. Yesterday someone asked, why is it stated as form is emptiness and emptiness is form within the Prajnaparamita Sutra? In fact, that is the perception of the noble ones. It may seem to be contradictory, but it is not. Yesterday we also talked about how the beacon of certainty also speak of such. We spoke that the two truths are of one essence, but it has two different aspects. I think you need to study it and contemplate upon it. And then the great Terton Lerab Lingpa humbly states that as for me who is a beginner, now speaks of the emptiness without a true existence, because in the common practice it specifically speaks of how to rest in that state, and then how both phenomena and a person within ultimate truth are non-existent. However, they exist in conventional truth like a dream, without any true existence, but they do manifest. That cannot be refuted by anyone. It does manifest in such a way. As a yogi or as a practitioner, at the time of entering into meditation, one has to practice emptiness. And then at the post-meditation, they should practice illusion, or to view all the existence as the path to enlightenment. This is the teaching also given by Mipa Rinpoche. At the time when entering into meditation, one should abide in the realization or the understanding that is parted from 4 extremes and 8 elaborations. But in the post-meditative state, one should practice, or one should turn everything onto the path of practice by viewing them as a dream and as an illusion. That is a best way of practice. That is the behavior or actions of a practitioner. Though after we enter into post-meditative state, we would have dualistic thoughts, but those are simply different kinds of manifestations. They manifest without any solid existence, and that is no other than dreams and illusions. In this kind of state, if one were to carry out any kinds of beneficial activities and practices, then this is really important, or that kind of attitude is really important. How to practice emptiness then? Over here, the Great Terton gives a really simple practice to meditate on emptiness. Firstly, one should meditate at a quiet place and sitting on a comfortable cushion, neither too soft nor too stiff. And then one should breathe comfortably. First, one should expel the 9 defiled breath, and then start to breathe at ease, and then turn one's mind by firstly making the aspiration of bodhicitta, and then turn one's thoughts away from all non-virtues and neutral thoughts, and then contemplate or visualize one's guru on top of one's head, and then wholeheartedly, devotedly supplicate to the teacher. Finally, the teacher would dissolve into light and merge into one's body, and one has obtained the blessings of the body, speech, and mind of the guru, and then rest in that state. We usually would practice, for example, visualize Pamasambhava when we practice Guru Yoga. I think we talked about that. Or if you don't have too much time, you can practice the Guru Yoga of Phuntsog Rinpoche and then merge your mind with the mind of the Guru. After Guru Yoga, you can make observation with the view of Madhyamika. That is, for example, the body, speech, and mind. The so-called I that I hold onto, is it of one entity or other entity? So we can use this way to make observation. Previously, we had already made the observation with the view of selflessness of self and selflessness of phenomena, and then you come to the conclusion that neither I or the phenomena exists. After, I think, especially those of you who study the Dharma, I think you can study Madhyamika, the fundamental wisdom of Madhyamika. I think that is really important. But lots of people nowadays would study Madhyamika right away before even the preliminary practices or the words of my perfect teacher. But I think it would be the best to plant the foundation of words of my perfect teacher and then Bodhisattva Charyavatara first, and then study the fundamental wisdom of Madhyamika or the Madhyamika Avatara and so on. I think those would be important. Though I do praise your spirit of learning the Dharma, however, I think you do need to have a foundation first. Otherwise, if you directly enter into the profound teachings of Madhyamika, it would sometimes create some unnecessary confusion. Over here, it says that the body is not existent. The body is simply empty form, and speech is empty sound. Mind is empty thoughts. when we look at the teachings given by Terton Lerab Lingpa over here, his particular observation of selflessness of self and of phenomena is through the investigation of the three gates. Or we can say that he gave you the direct pointing out through the three gates. This particular way of making observation is rather quite rare. He then continued to say that it is of the nature of emptiness. All of the phenomena, animate and inanimate, do not part from the nature of emptiness. And finally, in this kind of firm understanding, one should abide in meditation. When you cannot abide, then you should practice again in making observation. Now, with this kind of practice, you will develop the understanding that the body, speech, and mind are simply empty, and not only body, speech, and mind. In fact, all sentient beings, all animated and inanimate, are simply partakes of the nature of emptiness. With such understanding and the wondrous manifestation or wondrous function of the two, one would be able to practice or abide in the profound understanding of the wondrous manifestation. It is stated in Zen tradition as well as in the Vajrayana tradition. You should try your best to abide in that kind of state, and if not, you should then repeatedly to make observation. Eventually, you will be able to abide in such understanding of emptiness. I believe back in 2017, I've given an online teaching of a simple meditative method taught by Mipa Rinpoche, where it talks about how to abide, how to meditate. And in order to let the mind abide, one has to practice shamatha. That is why shamatha is so important to everyone, and that is why the universities and different kinds of large companies within hospitals, especially I think Westerners, really enjoy meditation. It is because it is a great way to release or to alleviate stress. And this kind of a shamatha practice comes from or sources from Buddhism. If we do not practice it, our resources are taken of great importance by the other people, but we as Mahayana practitioners do not take advantage of it. That would be such a pity. For the worldly people, they find benefits in meditation to, for example, relieve stress and turn their mind, train their mind, or find peace in their mind. It is very good for health and so on. But for practitioners, it is very helpful to your study and contemplation as well, because if one were to be able to tame one's own mind, then one would definitely be able to gain capacity in study and contemplation and practice. Also, it would increase one's faith to the teacher. Usually, we can see that there are people who are very distracted nowadays. They are so distracted that they cannot even finish one thing properly. Within the teachings given by Mipa Rinpoche in Beacon of Certainty, where it talks about whether one should practice meditation through observation or through abiding. As well, these kinds of teachings also had been given in the Wish-Fulfilling Treasury as well. It talks about how to abide. In Kamala Shila's teachings of the different methods of or different steps of practice, there are different ways as well. So these kinds of methods had been expounded by great masters. It also has been included in the Tibetan Tripitaka. I'm not so sure if it's in the Chinese version as well or not, but it is in the Tibetan version. Now, in terms of making observation and abiding, one should alternate between observation and abiding, and then make aspiration and then conclude the teaching. But during the teaching, one's mind should not be distracted. Whatever kinds of actions that you would take one should see them or view them as simply illusions, and then one should practice in such a way so that one can spend one's days in such a virtuous manner. This is quite crucial. For those of you who practice Madhyamika and Mahayana, their meditation and in their post-meditative realizations or in their post-meditative state, they also talk and chat and speak and eat and walk and all of those kinds of actions. But those actions are taken within the realization of everything is just like a dream and like an illusion. This is such an important way of practicing virtue. One would not specifically grasp onto those anymore. And if you do not hold on to them, you would notice that there is nothing to hold on to, but there are still appearances. And if you can practice in such a way, this is turning the appearance onto the path of practice. And if you can stay this way and spend your time in this way, that would be the best. Now, according to the Mind Mirror, there's a great master who stated that to practice the tens of thousands of practices that's just like empty flower, abide in the Dharma center that is like the reflection of the moon in the water, subdue the maras just like the reflections inside a mirror, and then attain the dreamlike fruition of Buddhahood. And then Gunum Chupo, this is indeed a great realization, a very high and lofty. It sounds very lofty, but it is spoken out of a very high level of realization. Gunum Chupo also stated in his teachings of Madhyamika, he said that to destroy the city of illusion and then to obtain the treasure island of magic. Speaking of illusion, nowadays I heard that many of you are currently studying the Resting the Illusion by Lung Chenpa, and I think many of you are studying it really well. When I was giving teachings on it, I really felt, I really gained insights from it, though I haven't taught on it for many years. I think throughout my life I've given teachings on it for 2 or 3 times, but I haven't been teaching it for a while now. But I think after giving teachings on resting illusion, and my view towards phenomena would transform. Even within 2 to 3 years, my view to phenomena is very different. So over here, the great Terton Lerab Lingpa states that one should be able to spend one's days and one's time in the state of illusion, and one can practice virtue in such a way. It is not that one would spend one's days in non-virtue after realizing that it is illusory. I think this is really important. The teachings given by the great Terton is indeed very beneficial, and there are so many different layers within his teachings. If you were to spend more time, if we were to have more time to study it, I would love to spend more time in giving you teachings. But unfortunately, due to the time constraint, we had to then speak a little faster. When we make observations, you would definitely be able to see that whatever we see, whatever we perceive, in fact, are no other than dreams. We don't even need to attain the first bhumi or to attain the fruition of arhat, but through simple observation, we would notice that indeed everything is just like a dream, like an illusion, and we would be able to have that kind of insight and feelings. If one were to think that all virtuous and non-virtuous deeds, in fact, are all just like illusion, then they're of no benefits and no harm. For that reason, why to adopt virtuous deeds but avoid non-virtuous deeds? This is indeed a very dangerous way of explaining it or of taking this teaching. The king, in fact, when Padmasambhava first came to Tibet, he also spoke to Trisam Ditsen, the king. He said that in Tibet there are the virtuous emptiness and emptiness based on non-virtue, and these kinds of non-virtuous wrong views are quite pervaded. For that reason, you have to be giving teachings on it is important to still make decisions of what to adopt and what to abandon in the conventional truth, even if your view is as high as the space, as vast as the space. But the way of distinguishing virtue from non-virtue is still really important. Well, sometimes after we study maybe too much Madhyamika and studied the resting illusion and so on, and then if you come to an understanding that says everything is illusory, then I don't need to do anything, then that kind of view is to generate such a view is indeed very pitiful, because you've fallen into a wrong path. One should know that emptiness is simply the helpful companion of karma. That is why even the smallest virtue and non-virtue should not be taken lightly, especially whenever we have a little bit of understanding of emptiness. It is the understanding of emptiness is to help us to adopt and abandon on the virtue and the non-virtuous deeds. And so we cannot take karma lightly. He continued to say that rather we should practice everything with the three supremes. At times of meditation, everything is of empty, and in the post-meditative state, we need to understand that everything is dreamlike and as an illusion. The virtuous seed would lead to the reap of virtuous fruits, and vice versa. Karma is true, and this is really important to understand. This teaching is really important. This is the essence of the supreme teaching. For those of you who have a little bit of a foundation in studying contemplation, I'm sure you understand what's the most essential teachings of Buddhism. But if you do not have such kind of pith instructions, then it would take a long period of time to understand. Indeed, you can see through this short teaching, you definitely need someone to give you guidance onto the path of Dharma, without which maybe the Three Supreme looks quite simple. However, simply read through it once, I don't think you'll be able to understand all the layers of it. Of course, you can read the words, but to have the Dharma lessons or not, there are still differences. Some of you may be too confident, but I think some Dharma teachings, if you don't study it, if you were to only look at the words, to read the words, then you won't be able to understand. To take an example of Lama Yantik or the Manjushri teachings, the Peaceful Manjushri, or Yeshe Lama, or the Treasury of Dharmadhatu, all of those teachings are really supreme, and you can read all the words. However, you won't be able to understand the profundity, the profound meanings that's concealed within. On top of that, if you were to only read, then it tend to become the Dharma tend to become very separate from you. The words stays as words, and your mind stream stays as your old mind stream, and they could not merge into one another. This is the second aspect. And the third aspect is that the uncommon practice that is without an object. So over here, it directly usually speaks of the profound pith instructions and skillful means that is helpful or that would benefit the noble ones who has already attained such realization level of wisdom. And the skillful means and pith instruction refers to Mahayati and Mahamudra. This is the direct pointing out or the guidance of Mahayati and Mahamudra. And it means that the actual uncommon practice without an object in fact fits into the realization of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or the ones who had already attained the realization of Mahayati and Mahamudra. Over here, the great Terton Lerab Lingpa, unlike Longchenpa, who usually would manifest of being a very confident teacher, who would say that my undefiled light would dispel the darkness of wrong views and so on and so forth. But over here, the great Terton states that a person like me who has not attained the realization of Mahayati, he's just being very humble. Unlike some of you may say that, well, let me give you some teachings of Mahayati, of Mahamudra. But Great Terton is not like that. Lerab Lingpa rather stays very humble. But I think too, the Easterners, usually especially the Asians, really like to be humble, and humbleness is considered as a quality, a merit, a virtuous quality. In various situations, Dudrum Rinpoche would, the second Dudrum Rinpoche, when he went to the West, in various situations, he manifested to be very humble. He said that, well, I'm a foolish person. I don't really know much about Dharma. And then the Westerners, I've heard that some of the Western media would post that on their newspapers and magazines, saying that the second Dudrum Rinpoche does not know Dharma. But if Dudrum Rinpoche doesn't know Dharma, then hard to say anyone would know Dharma at all. I think it is really a character of different ethnics. And the Tibetans would usually be very humble. They would, for example, if you were to invite some Tibetans to home and then ask them if they're hungry, they would say, oh, no, I'm not hungry. I'm not going to eat. Similarly, great Terton Lerab Lingpa said that he doesn't know Dharma, or he doesn't know Mahayati. And then the third aspect talks about the supreme of the concluding supreme, which is rededication of merit, so that one's merit would increase day by day. That includes the witness of rededication, the provisions of rededication, the sentient beings which are the object of rededication, the purpose of rededication, and the methods of rededication of merit. There's 5 aspects. At time of concluding your meditative session, one should, according to your own insight, to contemplate upon whatever kinds of practice that you've done. Are they of the virtuous deeds or not? Or are they of the pure virtuous deeds? That is to say, within your meditation, have you generated any 3 poisons? If you didn't, then you should rejoice yourself and then rededicate the merit. And if you had any of those impure thoughts, then you should confess. And then when we chant the aspiration prayer at the end of rededication, you should then make observation whether you will be able to have all the 5 requirements as stated here. Firstly, you need to make visualization of the witness of rededication, which means the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as well as the root teachers or lineage teachers. You need to first visualize your root teacher Pontsog Rinpoche, as well as the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas simply abides in the space right in front of you. They would be the witness for all of us to rededicate our merit, whatever kinds of merit that we had created today. And then we need to visualize all of our virtuous roots that had been given to all the teachers. So just like whenever we would attend some kind of a word ceremony, and there would be people witnessing it or attending it to see it. So that is the first one. The second one is that all of the virtuous roots, the provisions and our virtuous deeds and our virtues and merits should be rededicated as along with whatever kinds of virtuous deeds that we've practiced in this particular session. All the way from beginningless time until now, the virtuous roots accumulated through the 3 times, all the way from this lifetime until the attainment of the fruition of Bodhi. I make the rededication of merit. First, you make rededication of merit through your body, and then your provisions, and then your virtuous roots. Over here, it speaks of all kinds of bodies between now till the attainment of fruition of Bodhi. But in terms of bodies, there are different kinds of bodies, inferior and the superior ones, the ones that tend to get ill, and the ones that tend to be more superior, more healthy, and so on. So all the bodies, and then the virtuous roots, and then all of the provisions that you may have. The virtuous roots of the 3 times, all the body, and then all the bodies, and then all the provisions, and all the virtues and merits as accumulated by all sentient beings like our mothers, as well as our own merits, being accumulated together, and then make rededication of merit. So the virtuous roots, body, provision, as well as all the merits, the merits of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the merits of the sentient beings, that's like our old mothers. We need to rededicate them. We need to rejoice and then rededicate. All of our virtuous roots, body, provision, and all the merits accumulated by the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the sentient beings like our parents. The third aspect is the object of our rededication of merit. That is, firstly, our parents in this lifetime, and then all of the sentient beings that's just like our parents, and then our foes, and the crowds or retinues of Maras, which are also considered a part as sentient beings in this world, without any with great equanimity, we need to make dedication to them all. Whenever we speak of rededication of merit, we can just vaguely say that rededicate this to all sentient beings. But I think sometimes people would contemplate in such a way that I can rededicate my merit to my parents, no problem. However, I don't want to rededicate my merit to this particular person. We see these kinds of bias in our daily life as well when we have a lot of things to share with other people, we notice that the people would not share it with the people that they dislike. That is why over here in this particular teaching, it speaks of rededicate the merit to all sentient beings, especially the retinues of Maras and the sentient beings like our old mothers. I think I spoke of a story of a Zen master whose name was Wu Xiang. Once a farmer requested Master Wu Xiang to practice the rituals of liberating the deceased. And then the master said that, sure, I will practice so, and then I will rededicate the merit to all sentient beings. And then the farmer was quite upset, saying that, no, I paid to hire you to practice this ritual for my wife, but the other sentient beings did not pay you. They don't worth your rededication of merit. And then Master Wu Xiang said that it is fine, even by rededicate merit to all sentient beings, it's not going to create any harm to you. In fact, it is just like lighting 1,000 lights by lighting up one light first, and then one light would be able to pass down and then light up 1,000 lamps. So it doesn't really harm you at all. And then the farmer said, no, I don't want you to do that, because you can rededicate to anybody else but not my neighbor, because my neighbor is not a good person, and I don't want you to rededicate the merit to him. And then Master said that, well, we're going to rededicate the merit to all sentient beings. There is no way to exclude a person. And at the end, the Master finally rededicated the merit to all sentient beings. At the time of rededication, we need to contemplate in such a way that whomsoever doesn't treat you well, who was mean to you, and who created harm to you, even if you have very different opinions towards certain people, you should still, and you should especially visualize them on your right, on your left, your parents on the right, and all of your enemies on the left, and then rededicate all the merit to all sentient beings, especially my parents and the people who had harmed me and created obstacles to me. This is the practice of the Mahayana. I hope that you can rededicate merit today in this way. The fourth one is that the goal of rededication. The goal of rededication is not to seek for any worldly benefits, not to seek for any fruition that would lead to the future life's benefits, not to have any of those selfish goals. Rather, the only goal of rededication of merit is to benefit the sentient beings. I think you should be able to do that. In terms of benefiting others, the great Terton over here speaks of the two aspects. The first aspect is great compassion that benefits others, and then the great wisdom that would result in the fruition of Buddhahood. So the author speaks of that here. At times of rededication of merit, we need to have the mind of benefiting others. At the beginning, we need to have the mind to benefit others first. This is the aspiration. And then After we completed the virtuous deeds, we need to rededicate the merit so that all of the meritorious roots would be able to benefit sentient beings. We can contemplate in such a way that may all the sentient beings, that's just like our old mothers, may they be alleviated from all the causes and fruition of the suffering within the six realms, all the karma, all their karmic obscurations, as well as afflictions, also all of the habitual tendencies of obscurations of knowledge, as well as the defilements, could be quickly and swiftly purified. All the beings within the three realms, including ourselves as well as the Maras, the ones who has good relationships with us, and the ones without good relationships with us, all the causes and fruition of suffering, including all the karma and all the obscurations of afflictions of cognition, could be purified. In order to do so, I would offer my body, my provisions, as well as virtuous roots, to rededicate to all of them. This is a way to benefit the others. You can contemplate in such a way. And then you can think that may my virtue and all of my provisions and my body benefit the sentient beings. This is similar to the previous part, and it says that my self, all the way from this, my body, all the way from this lifetime until lifetimes later, may my body and my provisions, as well as all the virtuous roots, be rededicated to the sentient beings. And may all the sentient beings, like our old mothers, apart from happiness, apart with suffering, and enjoy all kinds of happiness, be endowed with all kinds of provisions, and alleviated from all kinds of suffering, and enjoy all kinds of supreme enjoyments, as well as enjoy in a higher rebirth, such as the celestial beings, and not only to have those provisions and enjoyments, but within a very short period of time, may they obtain the qualities and merits of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the various bhumis and paths. May they be able to spontaneously accomplish the two benefits and attain the perfect fruition of Buddhahood. My only wish, it says that, is that my body, my provisions, and all of my virtuous deeds could become the causes and conditions that would fulfill all sentient beings, that's like our old mothers. May they swiftly attain the fruition of Buddhahood. That is just like a wish-fulfilling jewel. So may my body, provision, and virtuous deeds become the causes and conditions for them to attain the perfect Buddhahood. One should contemplate sincerely in such a way. Many people nowadays, I think, when it comes to the benefiting activities, practicing the benefiting activities to the sentient beings, they usually would feel rather quite timid. Whatever kinds of opportunities that they have, they would be very afraid of doing so. People tend to have their guard on whenever there is an opportunity to benefit the others, and they would feel that, is there a trap, or is there going to bring some harm to me? On contrary, there are people who may not receive Dharma teachings or receive empowerments, but they may be influenced by some Mahayana teachings or the Dharma teacher's teachings. Whatever it may be, they would try their very best to help sentient beings, let it be big matters or small matters. Not only they would try their best without caring for their fame and status and loss and so on, they indeed do not have fear when it comes to helping others. This is the true spirit of being a Mahayana practitioner. So we need to learn from those kind of people, and we need to try to strive to do that. So over here it says that I will rededicate all of my merit so that all the sentient beings like our mothers will swiftly part from the causes and fruition of suffering, and then they will be able to obtain the perfect enlightenment that is without any defilement. You should practice this kind of rededication of merit, and you should contemplate in such a way again and again. Now, the fifth aspect of rededication is the method of rededication. If one were to have graspings of the three aspects, that is the self, the other, and the gift, and the process of rededication of merit, then that becomes the poisonous rededication of merit. But over here it states of one should not follow such kind of method. Rather, one should rededicate the merit in the pure way. It is to rededicate all of the virtuous deeds with the aim of having the sentient beings, all sentient beings, to attain perfect Buddhahood, and then rededicate merit in the threefold emptiness, in the non-grasping and dreamlike understanding. One should contemplate in such a way that it is the rededication of the threefold purity. They are of emptiness in the ultimate truth, just as stated in the Madhyamika teachings. Each of the six paramitas are empty. They are the threefold emptiness within ultimate truth. They are not existent. But within the conventional truth, all the sentient beings are dreamlike. The virtuous deeds are dreamlike as well. And the fruition that they would obtain are also dreamlike. One should rededicate merit in such a threefold purity. It is not to hold on to the true existence or the solid existence of the virtuous root. That would be poisonous. And then it speaks of one should try their best to rededicate it this way. And even if one were to only know this, but one should follow the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the three times who are already endowed with the wisdom eye. We can learn their ways of rededication merit. We can rededicate merit in that way as well. If you don't know how to rededicate merit, you can then contemplate however the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the three worlds would, of the three times, would rededicate merit. However, my teacher would rededicate merit. I would rededicate merit in this way as well. In the King of Aspiration, where it states that however Manjushri, Bodhisattva Manjushri and Samadabhadra rededicate merit, however the Buddhas of three times would rededicate their merit, I also follow them and rededicate my merit in this way. In this way, you can simply rededicate your merit in the threefold emptiness as well, or it is no other than that. The object of rededication merit is the limitless sentient beings. And then the aim is to eliminate the sufferings, the causes and fruition of sufferings of the limitless sentient beings. Upon thinking that all the limitless sentient sentient beings are being tormented by the innumerable sufferings, may I place them at the fruition of Buddhahood I dedicate to the merit. And then, because of the Buddha's numbers are limitless and the qualities of the Buddhas is limitless, all of the qualities of the merit, all of the quantities of the merit should be accumulated together and rededicate them all at once. In such a way, all the virtuous roots would increase, which then fulfills the four limitless and the four innumerable. This is a little bit difficult to understand even in the Tibetan language, but this is what it means, that to sum it up, the sentient beings, the limitless sentient beings had limitless suffering, and then in order to attain the fruition, the Buddha's numbers are limitless, and then the fruition of the Buddhahood, the quality of the fruition of Buddhahood is limitless as well. In the King of Aspiration prayer also states that until the end of the sentient beings, the end of the exhaustion of afflictions, our aspiration also would be endless and limitless. So it states, what it states here is very similar to that. It says that in the rededication merit, which also includes the four kinds of limitless, if one can rededicate merit in this way, then the virtuous roots would increase day by day. And this is called the supreme conclusion of the conclusion, which is the rededication. And then the next part is a summary. It says that just like a marvelous tree that would continuously to spur out the temporary blissful fruition of humans and celestial beings, as well as the everlasting qualities of path and bhumis of the bodhisattvas, I would rededicate merit in such a way. It says that if we were to rededicate merit in such a way, then even if one were to generate aggression to the others, the virtuous roots would still not be easily destroyed, because in this way, the merit, well, after rededicating the merit would not be easily exhausted, and all of the meritorious roots would become the cause of attaining omniscient Buddhahood. There was a story that if the rain were to drop from the sky into desert, then the water drops would dry out right away. However, if it drops into the grand ocean, then as long as the ocean does not dry out, the water drop does not dry out. So just like that, if your merits were not being rededicated, then, or if your virtuous deeds were not being carried out under the mind of bodhicitta, then it is just like the water drop dropped into desert. But if your virtuous deeds were to be taken out by bodhicitta, then it is not going to dry out. There is the difference in that. Now, in terms of the conventional practice of bodhicitta, is a skillful means to accumulate merits, the provision of merits. However, the actual practice without an object is the practice of accumulating provision of wisdom. In the Three Supremes, we've spoke about the part of the conventional bodhicitta, and another part of it is of the category of ultimate bodhicitta. In terms of the action or the practice without object is the practice of emptiness, that is the provision of emptiness. And then the practice of preliminary, which is making aspiration, and the supreme of conclusion, which is rededication of merit. These two are of the conventional bodhicitta. It is to accumulate the provision of merit. So over here, the great Terton spoke that as a beginner, we should try our best to practice with diligence, perseverance, and faith, understanding, and practice. This is the best way to practice the great treasure of compassion and emptiness. Within that, we need to practice aspiration of bodhicitta, rededication, and then abide in emptiness as well. As beginners, we need to have faith and diligence. Also, we need to generate certain kinds of experience and insight. In this way, we would be able to progress on the path. Also, this particular intention with joy is really important. If you want to practice from your heart, then that is really important, rather than trying to finish a task. Those attitude definitely matters too. Just as it states that in the precious garland of Madhyamika, it says that one should practice with the conventional and ultimate bodhicitta by relying on both of them. Then the fruition would increase and would be able to extinguish all kinds of defilements on various kinds of stages of path and the studies, all the defilements from the first to 10th bhumis, as well as increase all kinds of merits and qualities all the way from first to the 10th bhumis. And then at that time, when you have already attained those realizations as well as eradicated those defilements, you would be able to benefit sentient beings. That's like our old mothers. So to lead them from peace to peace and happiness to happiness. And eventually you would be able to attain the perfect fruition that is Buddhahood. So over here, I wish all of you who have made auspicious connections to listen to this Dharma teachings, may you often and always practice on the ultimate and conventional bodhicitta. These two are extremely important. According to a sutra, it says that all the two kinds of teachings that would lead to the accomplishment of bodhisattvas cannot be destroyed by the maras. The first one is practice emptiness, and second one is not to give up on sentient beings. Out of all the skillful means in our practices, in fact, there are various kinds of practices, but to sum it up, there are only two. The first one is emptiness, which is the ultimate bodhicitta, and then not to abandon any sentient beings, which is the conventional bodhicitta. With these two, which are the most important, would be those are called the treasure of great compassion and emptiness. At times of rededication of merit, you need to contemplate upon these 5 key points: the methods, the goal, the witness, and then the object. So if you can rededicate in this way and practice in such a way, I'm sure you will succeed with your practice. And this practice is really simple. On our path of practice, once we encounter some pith instructions, those instructions are very simple. If we can adopt it, then they could lead to the success of our practice and lead to accomplishments. Otherwise, I think you would become a jaded practitioner. Now, we have already concluded this particular teaching given by Lerab Lingpa. Throughout the whole process of studying, I hope that you can not only study it right now, but you would revisit this text again and again. There are lots of practitioners nowadays who don't have the time and opportunity to stay in Larungar, but now we have internet and we have various ways to study, for example, computer, cell phone, and various kinds of ways, and that could provide skillful means for you to study. So in this aspect, our time is really the best time for that. I hope that you would study the Three Supremes every year, to read it every year. It's easy to read it. There's nothing difficult in this text, but I hope that you could adopt this teaching. There are lots of people who probably don't know too much theory, but if you can understand the teachings and if you can truly utilize these Three Supremes, at least you won't tread onto the wrong path. And slowly you would definitely become a good practitioner. And then you would slowly be able to help people who have made good connections to you. And even if you cannot do that, at least you would be able to wish them well, and that would make your life very meaningful. We have concluded this particular teaching. For those of you who are listening to it now, or those of you who are listening to the audios or watching the videos, I hope that you could treat this text as if you're receiving the teachings right at this moment, and you have already and if you can do so, then you have already received the blessings and benefits from the great Terton Lerab Lingpa. Over here, he says that in order to fulfill the wish of Landre Wanchen Danzen Choja, great Terton Lerab Lingpa had composed this. This one has been recently been translated by me.